Hi, West Shore teachers and staff. My name is Sheila Green, and I'm a special ed teacher, primary level in Vermilion. And I sat on a board with your director, Mary Jo, for a couple of years, your own board, actually, for the last couple of years. And this last Sunday, I ran into Mary Jo, and we were talking about how things were going. And she said that one thing she's been interested in at your level is that you all are seeing more and more kids with special needs come into your program either as toddlers, even infants and toddlers and young kids, and through your school age program. And so as we talked, I told her we're seeing the same thing in the public schools. Lots more special ed kids, lots more kids with special needs. And um, I told Mary Jo that if she wanted, I would provide some information, at least for what it's worth, about things that I know about kids with special needs that if you know these things, it makes it a whole lot easier to program for your kids, maybe. And so I told Mary Jo I'd just give a little bit of background on a couple of the different um, types of disability categories and some things that you can do that can make things work really better in your classrooms and in your aftercare program. And if there's anything interesting here or anything that you have questions about that you want to ask, I'd love to come in and meet with you if that sounds like something that would be worthwhile. So I'm just going to kind of talk off the cuff here a little bit and maybe give some information that I know about from based on the experience that I have working with kids at the primary level. Again, with toddlers, you're going to have a little bit of a different ball game because you've got kids who are non-readers and you have kids who are doing much lower level things developmentally. But hopefully, some of the things that I know about that can help in a classroom setting for kids with disabilities might be able to be applied in your setting too. So I thought I might talk about three specific types of disability categories and some things that you can do to make a difference in a classroom setting with these three types of disability categories. The first one is working with kids that are on the autism spectrum, and I know a lot of times in your setting you're working with kids who aren't yet identified, but you have kids who come to you, especially in the after school program, who are identified as falling on the spectrum for autism, and you probably have some kids in your preschool program who show characteristics of autism. So one of the things that we've noticed at the primary level in working with kids with autism is that there aren't too many things that autistic kids have in common, but there are two things that they have in common that if you know these things about kids with autism, you can find some things that work with them. Number one, all kids with autism have a communication problem. And number two, all kids with autism are visual learners. And the speech therapist in my building used to say, language is not their friend. And what she meant was, a lot of times kids with autism, and especially little ones, aren't processing spoken language at all. And they've learned some behaviors that make it look like they're processing language, but the truth is they're really not very well anyway. And if they are processing auditory language, they're not interpreting it right a lot of times. And so a lot of the behaviors that come for kids with autism, especially young kids, look like aggressive behaviors or even sometimes kind of violent behaviors, acting out, tantruming, the meltdowns. A lot of times that's just a function of confusion for the kids with autism. And there are a lot of things that you can do visually to make it a whole lot easier for you and certainly for the child and for everybody around you. Um, if you remember that they are people who aren't processing anything verbally, but they're processing things visually, you can do things that you guys are already really probably doing a lot of. One thing that we do at the primary level is we do a lot of visual scheduling for kids who are on the spectrum. And so what it means is every single day when they come in, a lot of the kids on the spectrum have access to some form of a visual schedule so that they know how the day is going to go and they can kind of predict the day, and especially when there's a change in routine. One thing that works really well is for the very little guys, the kids who are non-readers, our kindergartners especially, is to use something like this sentence strip. You guys, I'm sure, probably have things like this. This is sort of a nice pre-reading task too. And a lot of times what we do is take pictures of the things that are happening in the setting, the restroom and the cafeteria and circle time and play outside and time with a book and whatever the sequence of events are. And we take pictures of those things. The photos are better interpreted by kids with autism than clip art. And so we usually take photos oftentimes and put Velcro on the back of them and let the kids order them sequentially, or for our very much younger kids or lower functioning kids, we just sequence the things that are going to happen during the day on the strip. And the nice pre-reading thing is that kids are kind of getting in a habit of reading visually from left to right. And then they've got a frame of reference that we can put down someplace or put up on the board in front of them where they can follow it all day and know what's happening. We can take those things off the list as we finish them so that the kids a lot of times don't have much of a concept of time passing, and they can kind of couple that with a passing of time. Anything that you can do for your kids with autism that provide them a visual support is really, really helpful. And I'm sure you've already got a lot of that stuff in place, but that's sort of nice to know. With my older kids, many times, almost daily, I'm writing a social story or putting something in print that I thought I said that 10 times, but they really didn't understand it. And once I put it in print, they get it. It's like the light bulb goes off. So for your kids with autism or on the spectrum, anything that you can do that has a visual piece is going to be a whole lot more helpful for those kids. That same thing applies to your kids with emotional disturbance, because those kids too a lot of times are acting out or having behavior problems because of confusion, or because they don't have anything predictable going on, or because they have such a chaotic setting that they're coming from that they don't have a way of ordering information or ideas in their own setting. So that visual schedule idea works really, really well for your kids who are presenting with emotional disturbances too. That, and maybe at your level you don't know what the identification is, you just see a whole lot of awful behavior. And that visual schedule, the way of showing kids what's coming always and providing them a visual support for what is going to happen next, is really, really helpful for those kind of kids. Another thing that's real helpful for those kids who are presenting with big behavior or emotional disturbance is to seat them in such a way that they can see the door, oddly enough. A lot of times those kids are having a problem because they don't know what's going to happen. They've got chaos going on at home, and they are really nervous and uncomfortable, and they can't see their stuff, and they can't see the door. So that's sort of a weird kind of a way to manage your environment, but it's one that a lot of times prevents a lot of behavior problems. If you can seat kids who are seeming to be tender or uncomfortable or unhappy in a way that they can see what's going on around them, they can see what's coming next, and they can see the door. They can see they're out. So that's kind of a funny thing. Finally, I'm sure you're having lots and lots and lots of kids who are coming to you either at the preschool level or in your aftercare program who have ADHD. And they're really hard to program for because they're having trouble staying in one spot, or you're having trouble getting them to focus on anything. Or they're really, really causing distractions for the rest of your group. And this is such a common theme at all the education levels for special educators, especially at this point. One thing I saw this summer that was really interesting was an occupational therapist launched a piece of research. She's been working on it for 10 years, and she identified this problem as one that is a function of not enough movement. And she discovered that or found that a lot of the kids who were kind of rocking in their chairs and having trouble sitting still and not able to focus and not able to land anywhere, her contention is that this is a function of kids not having enough intensive movement even before birth. And we do live in a culture where there's not a whole lot of movement going on. We're not even rolling up windows in the car. We're not even getting up to change the channel on the TV. Everything is pretty sedentary. And her contention is that this increased level of ADHD is a function of a lack of movement. And her prescription is for intensive movement with resistance several times a week, 3 to 5 times a week for 45 minutes at a time. Well, so what does that have to do with the classroom? What I found in my classroom is that I'm trying some things, I have been for the last couple of years, wherein we have intensive movement breaks. And by intensive, I mean providing opportunities for 10 to 15 minutes of intensive movement that has resistance, like wall push-ups, believe it or not, like anything that has weight-bearing properties, like jumping jacks, like running up and down stairs, like running in place with your knees up, anything that like dropping to the floor and doing push-ups, like any kind of activity or action that has an intensive feedback from the floor, or any kind of resistance from the wall, or any place that you can provide something intensive physically that provides resistance. It sounds crazy, but what I found is that if I can provide those kinds of movement breaks for my kids after a seated activity, we're seeing a difference in their ability to focus. And it doesn't happen right away, but it's happening across time. So, for what it's worth, if you can couple your less active activities with more physical resistance kinds of activities, which seems a little bit nutty, we're noticing a big difference in our kids' ability to focus. The bottom line is that anytime there's a behavior in the classroom, there's a reason for it, and we can't always see it. You especially can't, because you are programming for the little tinies. But you're I think at this moment we're seeing a lot of the same things you're seeing. Lots of kids coming to the table with real serious problems, and problems that almost look even like mental illness. I hate to say, but it's true. Not sure why, but if we can provide a setting that has lots of predictability and lots of visual support and lots of opportunities for movement, we can probably avoid some of the behaviors that we're seeing sometimes. I mean, I feel like there's still always going to be the outlier kids for whom you're going to have to provide extra support. But for the most part, I think if you can build some of those things, then it really helps. So if y'all would love to get together and ask questions, I might be able to answer. And otherwise, hopefully there are some ideas here that you can take to the bank. See you soon. Bye-bye.